You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Inland Wetlands Commission for August 13th, 2020. It is 7:03. This meeting is being held in accordance with Executive Order 7B, Part 1. All speakers will be required to identify themselves and their title each time they speak. Materials have been posted on the agency's website. And we'd like you to use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak and your line is muted so that you can be recognized. Thank you, Michelle, for being here to be able to take notes. And thank you, the Branford Community TV, for recording tonight's meeting. As Jamie noted, there's sufficient commissioners to provide a quorum, and all commissioners are seated for this evening. I guess we need to go through a roll call. Peter Basserman, Chairman, present. Next up.
Steve Sullivan, Inland Water Commissioner.
This is Dick Reynolds. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Richard. Yes, we can.
Clarice Begamon, Commissioner.
Sandy Krause, Commissioner.
Commissioner Boda, present.
Thank you. Now we have two sets of minutes, the July 9th, 2020 regular meeting minutes and the August 6th special meeting site walk minutes. Let's first tee up the regular minutes. They were sent out via email. Any motion to approve? I'll ask again. Any motion to approve the minutes of August? What do we have here? Pardon me. Any motion to approve the minutes of July 9th, 2020?
I'll make a motion to approve. It's Commissioner Krause.
Thank you.
Second. Boda.
Commissioner Boda seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of approval of the minutes? Aye.
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 Any abstentions? No. All right, next up, August 6th, the site walk of last week. Short and sweet, one pager. Motion to approve.
Commissioner Begamon, make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 6th site walk.
Commissioner Sullivan, I second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any abstentions?
Commissioner Boda abstaining.
Commissioner Krause abstaining.
One of my mom's at work. He works for Norm Pattis.
Do we have enough for approval here, Jamie?
Norm Pattis.
Oh, is that right?
You only need, this is Commissioner Boda, you only need a majority of the people voting. You don't need
Okay.
four for the vote.
Thank you. Okay, First order of business now is the application for review, Inland Wetland 200701, 434 East Main Street, which is approximately a 25,000 square foot office building and associate site improvements. And we have a number of folk on the call for that application, I believe. Who wants to start it off?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. For the record, my name is Matt Bruton. I'm an engineer from BL Companies. With me on the line is the applicant, Vincent Giordano, and also our wetland scientist, David Lord. As you guys remember, last month, I gave you guys an introduction to the project when it was submitted. I was not able to do the site walk last week because my wife was giving birth to our second kid. But I believe you were walking around with two of my coworkers and the applicant. If I have permission to share my screen, Jamie, I'd like to bring up the plans and kind of walk you through to remind you what we're proposing to do here. And then hopefully be able to field any questions you may have.
Congratulations on the birth of your second son, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. Everyone's happy, healthy, and COVID-free. So I appreciate it.
That's good.
That was a good day.
Yeah. A little tired, but I can deal with that.
Great.
So I'm going to just start with the landscape plan you see up here. There's a lot of colors on here, but I'll explain as I walk through. So you guys remember existing conditions. The address here is 434 East Main Street on Route 1. East Main Street is across the bottom of my screen where my mouse is now. This is a commercial property with all commercial abutters. In the rear, as a reminder, is the Branford River. It's currently a vacant 8-acre site with about 5 acres are actually buildable and developable. Currently it is vacant. There's cleared land in the front of the site, and as you go towards the rear, it's a wooded area. The green line that you see I've highlighted here, that is the wetland boundary on this site. If I go further back, the blue line, I'm going to zoom in, is the floodplain limits based on elevation. The red line is the limits of the CL&T easement that go across the back of the lot. And the pink line here is the sanitary sewer easement across the back of the lot. The yellow line that you see bisecting our proposed development is the upland review line. So obviously that's why we're here. Our development falls within your jurisdiction. Topography varies on this site from 40 up by the street down to 20 in the rear by the river. Wetlands obviously are adjacent to the river, which I showed you there in green. Along with the sanitary sewer easements across the back. In proposed conditions, we're proposing to do a single access driveway. I'm going to just jump to Google Street View. If you guys are familiar with the lot, this is the current state of the driveway, and this is the frontage of the lot. You can see the cleared area and the trees in the background. If I jump to the plan view, this is roughly the lot, Branford River you see clipping the back corner. This is the cleared area that was previously used as a soil stockpile area with the undisturbed trees and wetlands along the rear. So what we're proposing, besides a single access driveway to this lot, is approximately a 25,000 square foot commercial building. The applicant is on the line. There is no proposed use at this time. He is still shopping around for tenants. We are showing 117 paved parking spaces. The minimum required for this zone and this size building is 100. So we're slightly above what is required. We are leaving the little bit of excess to give us flexibility depending on which tenant or tenants may come to this site. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So we obviously show, this is the main entrance to the parking lot. We show handicap spaces in a couple of places along the frontage. We have a parking lot that goes along the front and sides of the building, and a drive aisle across the back. We do show loading spaces in the rear as well. We do show a dumpster enclosure in the back right corner. And if I move to the back here as well, I want to point out a few features. I believe these were part of the site walk that was staked out. The solid black line that you see here is the proposed retaining wall. And right below, or right above the retaining wall, we're on the high side, the river's on the low side. We have a 3-to-1 slope to the back of the concrete curbing that encompasses the whole parking lot. This development has been maximized to maximize the available buildable land on the property. As I said before, this is approximately 8-acre sites. You can see with the wetland line, the FEMA flood line, and the 2 easements in the rear, 3.7 acres of this lot are not developable by any means. So we are trying to maximize the space that is developable, and some of the restrictions that we needed to take in place besides the features of the wetlands and the easements is that Branford regulations max out your slopes at 3-to-1. And also you guys require the max height on a retaining wall of 8 feet. This site complies with both those features of 3-to-1 and a max 8-foot retaining wall across the back. So that has allowed us to get the 25,000 square foot building and the parking spaces the applicant is looking for. In addition to the building and parking, we do have a stormwater management system. This is obviously required because we're increasing impervious area on the lot. So we need to provide a system that also provides water quality and also mitigates peak flows. We're doing that with a couple of systems on site. We're proposing catch basins with deep sumps and hoods. We're providing a hydrodynamic separator and a subsurface detention system that all outlet to a level spreader in this area here. So water is fed back into the adjacent wetland system and eventually the Branford River. In the end, this mitigates.
Excuse me for a second. Can you, sorry, this is Commissioner Boda. So you said deep sumps. Can you take the time and get more specific about what your stormwater management is specifically, instead of saying things like deep sumps? If you would specify what is on the plan, that would be helpful.
Absolutely, Commissioner Boda. So I'm going to just move to the grading and drainage plan here. It's a little bit more clear. So we have a series of catch basins in the parking lot. This catches rainwater that falls directly onto the lot. So catch basins, I'll just circle a couple of them, are here in yellow. So these are the first point of contact where rainwater falls from the pavement into the system. The catch basins are precast concrete structures and that have pipes that lead to each other and eventually to this system. I'll just highlight those real quick for you guys. So piping here, 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 sorry, a little crooked, and eventually discharges in this direction. What I mean by deep sumps and hoods is when the water falls into these structures, you want a space between where the inlet of the pipe is and the bottom of the structure. That is 4 feet deep. And I'm going to just try to find it on my details real quick to give you a better picture of what that looks like. Let's see here. Sorry, going a little slow. Okay. Sorry, computer's spinning a little bit. Let's see. Okay. All right. So here's a cross section of a catch basin. So what you guys, when you drive around commercial parking lots, you would see this right here. This is where your car would be parked next to a curb. Water in blue would come across the parking lot and fall down into this structure. What I mean by a sump is this area here, this area beneath the inlet that would fill up with water prior to it leaving through the pipe. We have called this out as a 4-foot minimum. That is what's recommended by the Connecticut Stormwater Manual. This is a volume in an area that when stormwater falls into it, this is the first flush. You're getting trash, you're getting sand, you're getting salt, all of that you don't want mitigating downstream. So the first line of defense is this sump. This sump is going to capture those things, and this is an easy access point for the applicant to pop the grate on top and periodically suck out all that stuff as it builds up every season, spring, winter, fall, things of that nature. So that's what the sump is. The hood is also a feature that's part of this catch basin that helps keep the things that get trapped in the sump from mitigating up and through the pipe and down the system. So that's actually highlighted here by this. So the goal of the sump is to obviously fill up with water. As it fills up, it'll spill and leave. The goal of this is this will obviously fill up quite high during storm events. And we all know that trash or leaves would float or fall to the bottom. The goal of this sump is to not have trash or anything that's floating to just flow out with the water as it fills into the catch basins. You get sediment along the bottom and you get trash, and it would be blocked by this hood. So those two features of a catch basin are recommended by the Connecticut Stormwater Manual as the first line of defense on a stormwater management system. The next is I described a hydrodynamic separator. So this is another precast concrete structure that is put in the treatment drain prior to getting to the subsurface drainage system. So you'll see here, water would be flowing in this direction and eventually out this direction. The goal of this is similar to the sump. Water falls down in this and gets trapped in this area here to keep any sediment that has mitigated through the system further than the sumps and the hoods and captures this in a greater quantity down here. And then water will rise and leave the system as well. So it's this is always a belt and suspender system. Every device along the treatment train provides more and more quality to the water. So when it eventually discharges, it's clean. And the clean that I'm speaking about is 80% TSS removal. TSS stands for total suspended solids. That is the standard that the state requires us to design our systems to. The last system is the underground detention system. It's underneath the parking lot. We're doing that to maximize the space on the lot to get the building and parking lot where we need it. So I'm going to just show the cut right here. So it's a chamber system that's shown isometrically here in yellow. It's a chamber system. So this would be the pavement where you would either, you would stand, if you're a person, or a car, you could park here, and it would be beneath. So the water would flow into this system and fill up. The point of this system is truly peak flow mitigation. We're adding pavement to the lot. So hypothetically, it's not mitigating into the soils as it does now. So we are not allowed to let water rush off this lot without capturing it and slowing it down. If we had residential abutters or commercial abutters, you'd obviously want this because you don't want to flood out your neighbor. You can't pave this and then just let it go and he's out of luck. In our case, obviously, it's not flowing to a developed lot, it's flowing to the wetland of the river. The goal of this is obviously to not drown out the wetland of the river. You want to match those peak flows so the wildlife, the vegetation, all that stuff gets the water that it's historically gotten, and you're not going to wash anything out from an erosion standpoint. So I'll flick back to the grading and drainage plan, Commissioner, so I can show you where each of these components are. Ooh, too far. Oh, sorry. Trigger happy today. Oh. Okay, so the catch basins with the deep sumps and hoods are circled in yellow. The last hydrodynamic separator is the structure right before the underground system. So you got catch basins and sumps, pipes, hydrodynamic separator, and then I will change colors here. This is the size and volume of the underground system. From there, it's piped out to the level spreader. The level spreader is a device that takes a point discharge from a pipe. Water would be rushing out of this system. You don't want that. You don't want this point system because it'll cause erosion as water sheet flows to the river into the wetland. You want to spread this out so water is dispersed evenly and not causing any erosion issues, especially at the bottom of a retaining wall, especially in a landscaped area adjacent to a wetland. So as water discharges this underground system, it comes to this structure here. It's going to go left and it's going to go right. This is a perforated pipe and a stone trench. So water will go left and right. Once this pipe fills up, the water is going to bubble up to the surface and then trickle down to the wetland. So that is the system at the base of the retaining wall here. All of these things, Commissioner Boda, comply with Connecticut Stormwater Manual and your local regulations for stormwater management. Does that answer your question?
It's more specific. So I'm assuming you're going to continue. I'm wondering about any infiltration that you are planning on the site.
Yes, good question. Yeah, so during our initial discussions, I believe with this board and the town, we were looking at infiltration practices to recharge groundwater. That's a common request. It's great to do if it's possible, but it all depends on topography, soil types, and historical high groundwater. So before we got into this design, we did test pits on site with the applicant to see where groundwater was. They were done in the proposed location we are shown here of where our subsurface infiltration system is. Based on those test pits, and obviously with a gut check of being next to a river and also next to a wetland, the groundwater was discovered at 27 feet of elevation. So we're required by the Connecticut Stormwater Manual to provide at least 3 feet of separation between a subsurface system and seasonal high groundwater to provide accurate infiltration values. That cannot be achieved on this site. Based on the filling that we're doing and where groundwater is adjacent to this river, there is not enough cross section to provide a system and the separation to high groundwater to provide any infiltration. So the goal is obviously to recharge groundwater. So we do have landscaped areas on the property that will receive direct rainwater that will, recharge groundwater. We are also leaving, 40% of the lot untouched in the rear to be left in its natural state. But an infiltration system was physically not possible based on the soil constraints of the groundwater on the property.
And you said this is Commissioner Boda, you said the test pits that you did were exclusively in the northeastern portion of the property?
Correct. We did them all roughly in this area here. And we did that because the Connecticut Stormwater Manual wants us to not only clean stormwater and mitigate peak flows, but they want you to match discharge points. So all the water, as I explained earlier, right, we have elevation 40 by the street and 20 at the rear of the lot. In general, everything goes this way. So testing along the front doesn't really do anything because water needs to discharge in this area here. And if you put a system in the front, you're not going to be able to get it to the back. So everything needs to be done along the rear of the lot to get it to its eventual home, which is the wetland and the river. And we obviously didn't want to go into the wetland to disturb any of that. And obviously, you guys know wetlands, water is either at the surface or right below the surface.
You can, this is Commissioner Boda. You can continue. I'm not sure where you were gonna go next, but we'll have more questions later.
No problem. So just continuing on, part of our set also, which would be important to this board, we did provide sediment and erosion control plans and a narrative. So these are devices that would be installed during construction to protect the street, the wetlands, any existing systems adjacent to the property from erosion during construction. So devices that are installed, we have proposed on this EC1 plan include silt fence, silt sacks, tracking pads, erosion control blankets, stockpile areas. These are all devices that will help soil that is not stabilized. So stuff that's either not compacted or paved on or has vegetation growing on it to capture that when during a storm event, during construction, to keep it from mitigating downhill into the wetland and eventually to the river. So if you want, I'll go into detail about some of those things here. One is a construction entrance. You guys have seen these on hopefully every construction project you've ever driven by. It's usually a large pile of riprap at the entrance. Construction vehicles are intended to drive over this as they enter and exit the site. The goal of the riprap is to rumble any loose dirt off the tires so it's not tracked into the main road, which will eventually find its way during a rain event into catch basins and eventually waterways. Other items include silt sacks. So as the site is brought up and catch basins are installed, water obviously will be allowed to flow and fall into these catch basins. But before pavement and landscaping is installed, this is loose soil that you don't want running through the piping system and down into the wetlands. We're proposing silt sacks, which is a common device. It's temporary. It's installed in the catch basin. It collects the sand and grit and lets the water pass through it. They're cleaned out periodically. And then when the site is stabilized with pavement, landscaping, all things of that nature, they're removed and the catch basin can function as designed. We've also provided erosion control blankets. These are temporary stabilization methods that are rolled out onto slopes. We show them here by this cross pattern. So we show them in areas of 3 to 1 because that's obviously an area that's prime for erosion because of the steep nature of the slope. These are blankets that are laid out to capture and keep soil from moving until vegetation can grow in. So we have proposed those in several locations on site in the areas of proposed steep slopes to make sure soil does not move during construction. Another item.
Excuse me, can you, Commissioner Boda, can you clarify the erosion control blankets? What kind are you using? What is the material that the erosion control blankets are made out of?
Let's see here. Let me see if I have it here. So here's a detail on sheet EC3. This is kind of give you an idea of how they're installed in a 3D fashion, right? So they're blankets that are rolled down the slope, overlapping and stapled together in a pattern similar to this. That would remain until everything is stabilized. Let me see if I can find the type. There's obviously dozens of different manufacturers and products and companies that provide different things. I don't know off the top of my head, Commissioner Boda, but I can surely find it for you by the end of the meeting if you don't mind.
That works. Commissioner Boda.
Okay. Again,
I think while I've interrupted you, if you would talk a little bit about, you said that the maintenance schedule, you said periodically, and if you would clarify what you mean by periodically, including the anti-tracking pad and the silt sacks, what triggers cleaning out, and then generally what is the maintenance schedule?
Yep, absolutely. Great question. I am flicking now to our stormwater management report. That is, you see down here, almost 300 pages. The first half of it is the stormwater calculations that the town engineer reviewed in terms of peak flow mitigation and things of that nature. The back of it, we provide a stormwater operation and maintenance plan. So this is a plan that is followed during construction and also should be followed by the owner applicant moving forward after the site is constructed. So let me just skip through here. So there's a brief narrative on the description of what I'm speaking about in the plans that you saw right now. But I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. So what you see on the screen is the maintenance schedule during the first year of operation. This is the critical year, obviously, because this is when things are constructed and getting stabilized, grass is growing, landscaping is getting mature. So the sheet we have here is something that can be kept on site, that can be monitored with a completion date and signed off by a manager of the facility. We have inspections scheduled January, February, March, April, August, October, and December. These typically line up with season changes. So snow melt, fall melt, landscaping changes with trees. And this is what is expected during each of those months. Catch basin inspection, so that's going to be pulling those grates, seeing if there's any sediment buildup, any trash buildup, cleaning out those things. Same thing, stormwater detention system, that is the underground chamber system. If any soil or grit mitigates through the system, it's captured in this as well. That needs to be inspected. If there's a buildup of any debris, that needs to be cleaned out. Same thing with the hydrodynamic separator. So that repeats during the months. In the springtime, we get to some of the landscape features when blooming and budding happens in New England. So that's maintaining landscaping in terms of shrubs, lawn limbing, things of that nature. Same thing in the fall, tree and lawn fertilization. We obviously want trees to take root because it holds the soil. It's also aesthetically pleasing and part of your zoning regulations to have a certain amount of trees and shrubberies from a zoning perspective, but also from an aesthetic perspective. So that's during the first year of operation. Moving forward after that, it's pared down a little bit. It's not as frequent, but still the same level and same thing, right? Catch basins, hydrodynamic separators, landscaping, things of that nature. These are sheets that can be replicated. You can type in the year, or type in when it was done in manager's initials and any notes to make corrective action to any devices that are seen as needing maintenance. We've also have an inspection log here. As I said, the catch basins are really the first line of defense with the sumps and deep hoods. So, you can put in catch basin 1, circled condition, evaluation. Is there debris 1 foot above the sump, right? Date of cleaning, hood stuff, catch, things of that nature. So this is something that we provide as the engineer. So we want the system designed to operate from day 1 to day, year 30 to operate the same, because you're trying to protect the resource downstream. So this is something that's part of our stormwater management system to make sure that happens, and something that the town can rely on as a guidance document. Same thing with the subsurface detention system. This is a cut sheet from the inspection and maintenance manual for Storm Tech, which is the chambers beneath us, some of the devices that are used to clean and jet out that system per manufacturer's recommendations. Same thing with the hydrodynamic separator. Right, some of the devices here, manufacturer recommendations. If I go back to the plans, I will show you something else as well. All right, so this is a detailed narrative. It has items like construction sequence, operation and maintenance requirements, grading operations, maintenance of sediment and erosion control measures. So I'll just read out a couple sections if this will be helpful, Commissioner Boda. Siltation fences shall be inspected minimum weekly or after each rainfall event. All deteriorated fabric and damaged posts shall be replaced and properly repositioned in accordance with this plan. Sediment depositions shall be removed from behind the fence when they reach a maximum height of 1 foot. Talking about same thing with hay bales, talking about sediment traps. What else is a good system here to point out?
Excuse me,
Right.
Commissioner
Big
Baxter,
notes.
are you reading from EC2?
I am reading from EC2. If everyone wants to follow along, I know I'm kind of moving pretty quickly with my mouse. Last note, maintain all permanent and temporary erosion and sedimentation control devices in effective condition throughout the construction period. Upon completion of work, sweep parking lot, remove all temporary erosion and sediment control devices when authorized by the authority having jurisdiction. So in this case, we would be coordinating with Jamie to make sure this site is stabilized not only in our eyes, but also in the jurisdiction's eyes. So nothing is prematurely pulled out, which would allow erosion to happen and damage wetlands downstream. So that's that. These are pretty extensive notes. If you guys have not had a chance to read them, I don't want to, there's probably a couple hundred here, but that just hopefully answers briefly your question, Commissioner Boda. Okay. Let's see. In terms of utilities, all the available utilities, water, sewer, gas, electric, telephone are available either in the street or on site. Most of the utilities are connected to East Main Street with the exception of sanitary sewer. There are no sanitary sewer services in East Main Street. That is, if you remember from the beginning of my presentation, there's a sanitary sewer easement that runs along the back of the property. We are showing a connection back here. It is ringed with erosion control devices, and it does stay outside of the wetland. So we are not proposing any direct wetland impacts for this connection. Obviously, if we connected in any other way, here, we'd be cutting through the wetlands. Nobody wants that. We know that would never fly. So we found a location that stayed within the upland review area and reached that connection point. Just wanted to point that out to you guys. In terms of landscaping, obviously we want the site to look pretty. We want it to be aesthetically pleasing. We want it to be a business that will thrive once it opens. We want to comply with zoning regulations. So this is the landscape plan. We have a variety of trees and shrubs along the frontage of the property. We also have them interspersed in landscape islands around the parking lot. We also have a variety of shrubs in the area as well. Anything else that is not pavement or sidewalk would be treated with a lawn seed mix. We also, I'll let David Lord speak to this when we get to him. We also have provided restoration areas, I believe, which were talked about potentially during the site walk, along the base of the wall that is between the base of the wall and the wetland area that's depicted by an enhancement area here, here, and here. So that's my quick-ish presentation. Just want to recap, we have no direct wetland impacts. We are in the upland review area where we are severely hobbled by some existing conditions on the site in terms of easements, wetlands, FEMA flood areas, and we're matching the constraints of your regulations in terms of maximum height of retaining walls and slopes. We think this is a great use of the property that really only 50% can be used in a commercial district. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'm sure you do want to speak to as well the applicants and the wetland scientist. So I will leave the plan up and stop talking.
That would be a good next step, I think, to have David Lord speak. You still with us, David?
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I can't see David on my screen.
He's here.
There he is.
There he is. Thank you. I
David
guess
Lord?
you've been handed the baton, David.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Certainly.
Okay. For the record, David Lord, wetland scientist for the applicant. My part of the presentation this evening concerns the wetland enhancement restoration plan, which I prepared for this site. It's a document that was submitted as part of the application. It's dated August 5th, 2020. I'll just describe it. The limitations, I don't believe I have the ability to show the actual report, but I'll refer to it. If you have questions as I'm going through my description of the plan, please feel free to interject them as we go along. You'll see a color photo on page 1 of the plan. This is a easterly view of the restoration area at approximately wetland flag 23. If you look in the the right central portion of the photograph, you'll see a red line. That's the approximate location of the retaining wall. The existing sediment filter fence is visible to the left or north of the sediment filter fence is the associated wetland boundary. This was used as an example. The grassed area between the red line retaining wall area and the wetland boundary is the area where the proposed plantings that I'll be discussing are to take place. We're looking to establish native tree and shrub species in there to establish a dense woody vegetative cover that provides nesting sites, cover protection, food supplies for wildlife within the upland review zone area between the retaining wall and the on-site wetland limits. I've called out 3 separate restoration areas, basically due to their difference in existing vegetative cover, their location relative to the utility line right-of-way, where we have some height restrictions, and the center restoration area, which is restoration area B. We're also proposing to take some invasives out of the existing wetland vegetation and plant some native shrub species as well as tree species into those areas. Beginning on the second page of the plan, there's a construction sequence which follows step by step how these areas will be restored or enhanced. I'll give you a short overview of that sequence. In the areas we will go in, myself, I will mark all of the invasive plant species that are to be removed. The removal will be done by hand. We're attempting to minimize the disturbance of soil. The existing trees and shrubs will be cut off at the ground. The root systems will be left in place. They will be treated with a systemic herbicide to kill the root system to prevent regrowth of the invasive species. And then into those areas in existing open portions of the restoration area, such as that grass area that's on the cover of the plan, is where we'll be doing the plantings of the trees and shrubs, which we'll get to in a moment. The 3 areas that are proposed for restoration enhancement are shown on page 2 in the green crosshatched area. On page 3, there's a description of the 3 planting areas A, B, and C, description of how the tree and shrub species were selected for this project. And on page 4, there's 3 columns, A, B, and C, which shows you species composition, height of the plant to be used on this site, and the numbers in each of the restoration areas. Now, one difference in this particular type of restoration plan, we may need to use additional plants of these species based on the number of invasives that we encounter in each of the restoration areas. I have not done a detailed inventory of how many individual invasives we're going to be pulling out. I have this list prepared on page 4 to give the commission an idea of what we're proposing in each of those areas, and for lack of a better description, a minimum amount of trees and shrubs that will be put into each of those restoration enhancement areas. It's quite possible that additional trees and shrubs will be needed in each of those restoration areas, again, based on the number of invasives that we'll be taking out of each of the 3 areas. You have spacing and fertilization recommendations. On page 5, you have permanent and temporary vegetative stabilization, seed mixes, which will be used for bare soil areas, which we are proposing to keep to a minimum in the removal of the invasives and the planting of the new species. There is a detail or a description narrative of the New England Conservation Wildlife Mix, which is the long-term no maintenance seed mix, which we will be putting into the enhancement areas. And lastly, there's a maintenance and monitoring program similar to other plans I presented to this commission, with the exception that this one has more details on how the invasives will be removed prior to the planting that are proposed within the different areas. Your standard requirements for these types of plans is the inspection, sequence, and monitoring period of time, and the minimum threshold of 85% for all trees, shrubs, and ground cover that are planted in here to be maintained throughout the life of the post-completion inspection period. The commission will receive by October 1st of each monitoring year a written report by myself along with photographs that will document the establishment of these plant materials, the establishment of ground cover vegetation, and the overall development of the woody vegetation that we are proposing to put into these 3 areas on this site. That is it's a conclusion of what I am proposing to talk about this evening. At the appropriate time, I'll try to answer any questions that the members may have. Thank you.
David, Commissioner Basserman, the A, B, and C areas, these are functioning areas, and we are looking to remediate them, or I should say restore them, enhance them for aesthetic reasons, or is there something functional in the enhancement that is going to be also achieved?
So from a functional standpoint, specifically, we're reintroducing native trees and shrub species that will provide nesting sites, cover protection for wildlife species, and probably most important, food sources that are limited to not presently available within the areas that we are proposing to enhance and restore. On the site walk, we noticed, and I pointed out a couple of very large black cherries which have died. Those will be knocked down and let decompose in place, or I should say taken down and allowed to decompose over time to add organic matter to the wetland system. But the tree species, the shrub species, were specifically selected for a functional basis to elevate the the environmental functioning of this important area between the proposed retaining wall and the limit of the on-site wetlands.
Thank you. Any other presentations to be made regarding this application?
This is Matt Bruton again from BL Companies. Vincent, did you want to add anything that David and myself did not cover so far?
No, I think you really were quite comprehensive in your the descriptions of how we're going to go about developing this property in terms of the various stages of development. Of course, what's foremost on our mind during the early stages of this is maintaining the property so that it doesn't infiltrate the wetlands or come near it. We're very conscious of that on all the properties that we own and develop. You've seen silt fences in your site walk the other night, and that's kind of like the modus operandi, the way we operate under. So we're very conscious of that throughout the development process. In terms of the ultimate use of the site, we're very anxious to get the site stabilized, if you will, so that we could successfully market it. We've had any number of inquiries as to the property. Nobody gets really too excited about it in its current state. So that's why we're very anxious to get this moving. So we're very proactive in getting this site developed.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Mr. Giordano, the large mound, a large pile of soil that is on the site, can you speak to the condition of that material?
That material is virgin red rock type material, sandy, reddish rock material that's been pulverized. 100% of it came from Prospect Hill over at Yale University during the development of the Yale Science Building. We were the site contractors on that particular building that has just been completed and opened. We had to excavate and remove a total of 120,000 cubic yards of all this red rock virgin material in order to get the two-level sub-basement for the new building in. A portion of it came to this site. The vast majority of it went to other sites around the city and even Yale-owned sites. It's, like I say, it's all certified virgin, clean material.
And I assume that the letter that I'm looking at on this is Commissioner Bassman, the letter that I'm looking at on the screen attests to that clean fill?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
We couldn't move it. Like I said, it was 120,000 yards that went off site, and we couldn't move any of it to the locations without this type of analysis and certification for that fill.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Boda. I had just a couple of general questions. So one, wondering the plan for where snow will be piled in the winter.
This is Matt Bruton from BL Companies again for the record. So Commissioner Boda, yes, the snow will be stockpiled in the landscaped areas adjacent to the parking lot. Based on the topography of the lot and wetlands, the orientation has actually led to some relatively large landscaped islands. So there's obviously a landscaped island adjacent to the building in this area. There's a large one in this corner here between the loading spaces. And also a wedge here against the building. There's also small landscaped areas along the perimeter as well. As we all know, living in New England, if there's a massive storm that does require extra snow to be stored, we do have a small excess of parking spaces, so those could be used as well. If it's a monumental task with snow that inhibits use of the property, the applicant would look to possibly collect it and move it off-site.
Is that this Commissioner Boda, is that documented on your plan?
Let me see. It's a response in our letter back to town staff. Let me just see if it's on this plan here. I don't know if it's specifically called out on a plan, but it's in writing to the letter responding back to Jamie. A note can surely be added to the plans though, if that's required.
Yeah.
I can also, this is Vincent Giordano again. I can also speak to the emergency requirement to remove snow from our properties. As you know, we own Branford Building Supplies here in town, and with all the lumber piles and everything else there, there's very little room to store snow. So we always have the facility and the ability to remove snow from the properties if that becomes the requirement. On a site like this, there are a number of areas, but if we have to move it, we move it.
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Boda. I don't think, the general practice of needing to remove snow from the site is
Right. That's
what
right.
I'm getting at. It's more an issue of ensuring that it's not pushed back to the northeastern section of the site, and then so as Mr. Burton just mentioned, if it's going to be in those landscaped areas, and it can be that would be added to the application, the site plan. That's helpful to have so that it's documented.
Absolutely, Commissioner Roda. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Again, Matt Bruton for the record. We do not want snow stockpiled in this area here adjacent to the retaining wall. As it melts, it would go untreated into the wetland. We'd want it in landscaped islands around the parking lot, so when it melts, it goes into our treatment system, our stormwater management system. So I will not be calling out this area as an area to push snow.
Mm-hmm. Good. And then, so a couple of other quick things. I just want to bring back to your attention the erosion control blankets, and what I would, I'll be more specific. What I would not like to see is erosion control blankets that are constructed with plastics that are then left there. So something that is a natural fiber. I know they're pricier, but given the location, I think that's would be a helpful consideration. And then, so Mr. Lord, so with the inspection for the plants, it looks like it stops at 3 years. I believe our past practice has been 5 years, once per year to 5 years. So I wanted to follow up with that.
That's no problem. I understand that it is 5 years. That's something that snuck in from a different, from my model plan. I should have upped that to 5 years, which is your requirement. I will change that page and submit any updated version to Jamie.
Okay. And then the one other piece, I believe last month we talked about those. So the difference between the number of parking spaces proposed and the minimum that's required was 17 spaces. And we had discussed potentially putting those spaces into reserve. Can you address that today, please?
Sure. I'll let Vincent jump in if he feels necessary. So right now, this building is just a hair under 25,000 square feet. Based on that, I'll just show you the chart here. The zoning regulations require 250 square feet of gross floor area, which is a total of 100 spaces. We are providing 117. Based on the fact that we don't have a defined signed tenant at this time, we are asking to leave the little bit of excess of parking spaces as our ability to attract, vibrant business or businesses to the lot. We understand that it is slightly above requirements, but based on the fact that we don't know who the end user will be, we're looking for a little bit of flexibility to make sure we can attract a viable business to this site. Obviously, in the future, if something happens where the building shrinks or tenants are vacant or that demand is not needed, we could remove spaces as necessary.
Well, I'm not
this is
sure.
Commissioner Boda.
Yeah.
I think that the likelihood of base that is parking ever going back seems exceptionally unlikely. And so I am wondering if you might consider doing something that is, that reserve that is potentially more pervious than not. And so something that is maybe pavers that would allow for both the, any potential tenant to see that this is a space that could be converted into parking, but at the same time, we are minimizing the impervious if it's really not necessary.
Vincent, are you okay with that? I mean, I think we could definitely designate some areas that are farthest from the building that could be shown as future parking if needed and left in the natural landscaped setting for now, unless they're needed. But in the meantime, they'd be green space as Commissioner Boda is requesting.
Like, this is Vincent Giordano. Matt and Commissioner Boda, I have no problem with showing that.
Good. I think I'm okay for now.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Mr. Bruton, can you talk a little bit about this diversion berm? Looks like it's going to be put in as part of the construction sequencing.
Yeah, so you're looking at EC1?
Correct.
Yeah, 1 second. Oh, too far. So again, Matt Bruton, engineer from BL Companies for the record. So what we call out here is this diversion swale. I'll highlight it in the color here so it pops for you guys. So line in this fashion. So as you are aware, right, we're proposing to fill the rear of the lot by constructing this retaining wall, raising the back of the site up to make a level pad. So we have a retaining wall, 3-to-1 slope up to the paved area. Eventually, when that is further along and the stormwater system is in place, that would be used to capture rainwater that falls during construction to clean it and mitigate it and discharge it to the appropriate spots. But before that happens, so between clearing of the land and as the lot is being raised with earthwork, you want to make sure water is being diverted to correct spaces, captured and treated and cleaned before the structural devices are installed. So what we show here is a diversion swale. That is a rough grading that would be put in as the lot is filled up and the retaining wall is constructed. It'll do two things. It'll keep water from getting towards the retaining wall, so Mr. Giordano can actually construct the wall, but it'll also divert the water to a temporary sediment basin. The goal of this basin, as you see here, is temporary. It's sized based on the drainage area that flows to it, and it's sized based on the Connecticut Stormwater Manual. So this is a basin that would be temporary in nature. It would be installed and modified as the site is raised up. And the goal of it is to collect sediment-laden stormwater, divert it to this basin so it can be settled out, and then clean water can be discharged downside of the wall back towards the wetlands and the river during construction. Once the site is raised completely and the catch basins are installed, that would then take over as the means and methods to get stormwater out of the parking lot and back to the wetlands. So it's a temporary situation between construction and completion.
Matt, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Quick question regarding the diversion swale. It looks like there's a swale proposed to the east of the retaining wall that also is proposed to go towards the temporary sediment trap. Is that correct? And will that work as the site is being graded out?
This one here, Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah. So this will obviously depend on how the lot is raised and in what stages. To me, this is an area that would work as things are starting to be raised, but as the wall is constructed in this area, this diversion swale will be the main track to get water to this temporary sediment basin. So this is almost like a initial phase one to get some of this area stabilized. And then as the wall is constructed, the site is raised, the red line will take over as the main means to divert water to the temporary sediment basin.
This is Commissioner Bassman. And then do I understand that basin gets filled in with when the wall has been completed? Is that what happens?
Correct. Once the wall is completed and the earthwork is set, then we'll end up with this final condition here where the basin was roughly in this area here. That will be removed, filled in. You'll have paved, sloped landscaping, and the catch basins and piping will take over as the stormwater management system on site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Commissioner Begemon. A question about two things, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask as I'm a new commissioner, but regarding the removal of invasives, which sounds like a good idea, the systemic herbicide that is proposed, what is that? Because we're right near a wetlands and glyphosate probably. Want to know about that. And then the second question is regarding the dumpster area, and is the dumpsters attract a lot of debris, and it's right at the top of the wall, and I don't know if there's something protecting debris from going down the hill, the dumpster area.
I'll start with number two, and then David could do number one. Commissioner, the dumpster enclosure is here in this corner. It's a 20 by 20 trash enclosure on a concrete pad. It's enclosed with a chain link fence with vinyl slats. It's at the back of the lot because usually it's the most unappealing thing that towns do not want to see in the front yard. But it is enclosed with gates and a fence, so the dumpster would fit inside here. So it would act as the fence would act and the gate would act as a deterrent from debris blowing out of the dumpster and into the parking lot and potentially off-site down into the wetlands.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. It's my understanding that there will also be a chain link fence along the top of the retaining wall. Is that correct?
Matt Bruton from BL, yes, that is correct. I'll just quickly highlight that here. This little dash X line is along the retaining wall. Does two things: keeps trash from blowing over the top of the edge, also keeps people from falling off over the top of the edge. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. To go with Clarice's second question or other question regarding the invasives management, do the areas extend into the wetland areas that are proposed to be enhanced? And is there any different treatment as far as seeding or plantings of the upland area versus the inland wetland area?
The herbicide that's proposed to be used is one that is licensed by the state of Connecticut, registered or labeled for use in this particular situation for this particular control mechanism. What we are attempting to do with the use of that is to minimize ground disturbance in the area where we are removing the invasives. There are mechanical means where we can get in and remove larger parts of the plant. Unfortunately, that equates to a larger earth disturbance. So we're trying to minimize earth disturbance, cutting off the top growth, using the systemic herbicide, which kills the entire root system, but does not translocate outside of the root zone into the adjacent soil areas. It's very localized. It moves through the plant. It's absorbed by the cut surfaces, moves through the plant and kills the plant, but does not translocate out into the adjacent soils. Again, it would be done by a licensed professional applicator. There's no high pressure system. It's either by low pressure pump spray or even better, a roller application, wick application to the cut stems would be used to minimize the amount of herbicide that's applied to any particular invasive plant stem. That's the thinking and the basis for why that particular control method is being used in this circumstance. We are in an upland area removed from the wetland. The small number of invasive species that are within the wetland area in Restoration Area B, we can deal with by hand. If the commission would like, we can preclude any use of pesticides within the wetland portion of Restoration Area B. It's a very small area, but it is one that does have some invasives in it, does have some need for control. We can attempt to do that mechanically, continued removal of regrowth of stems during the 5-year post-completion monitoring period.
Any other questions, Commissioner Bassman? Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Bassman, again, this is actionable this evening, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. It is actionable if the commission wants to move forward. It can also be continued to the next meeting, September 10th. It's up to the commission. The deadline without an extension is September 11th.
Mr. Chairman, I know Matt Bruton again for the record. I know as engineer, I know my applicant is very happy to work with the town on all items to make this project something that the Inland Wetland Commission is comfortable approving. You know, given the fact of the state with the soil stockpile as it is today, we'd love to get an approval from you guys tonight that we can move on to planning and zoning to eventually, you know, develop this site and secure it more so we could, you know, protect the adjacent areas and make this as an economic driver for this the vacant lot. So that's my 2 cents.
Right, and this is Vincent Giordano speaking here, and I would also second that, Matt. You know, the pile's been there since 2018 or 17 rather, and you know, it's, you know, we've been able to keep it stable, and we've worked very hard at that. But you know, there is a point in time where we certainly don't want to lose control of what's there. So The sooner we can get this approved, and get moving on stabilizing that site or restabilizing that site, I think we're all better off. And as I said, earlier, the timing is important, for marketability as well. So it's a combination of aesthetics and also just site control and stabilization.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Mr. Giordano, I guess what is the concern on the pile getting unstable? A major storm? What are the kinds of things that you see that could be detrimental to the stability of that site?
Well, quite frankly, the pile has actually stabilized since early on. It wasn't as stable initially because of lack of compaction and the like, and also we had to keep reintroducing erosion control measures. For those of you who are on top of the pile last week, you probably saw one area of some really heavy surge stone where we had to, mitigate a potential problem area. And, the pile has a lot of surface area to it. We've got stabilization booms all across it. But there's a lot of surface runoff on that pile, and occasionally it will inundate the perimeter. And we've had to deal with that. And I just think that it's time to deal with it in a larger, complete way.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Basserman. Is there a motion to proceed with this application this evening?
This is Commissioner Boda. I have one more question, and it's really a curiosity. I'm wondering about the temporary sediment trap, and why it is that temporary trap isn't, why we didn't consider something above ground or open in the end for long-term sediment and erosion control. So that's stuck in my head, and I'm curious about why everything was really pushed underground and tucked away until it's off-site. And I think that the state has really encouraged the daylighting a lot of that stuff. So I'm wondering about the thinking behind that decision.
Sure. Again, Matt Bruton, engineer from BL Companies for the record. So the above ground basin, Commissioner Boda, obviously you can see that this is the temporary basin just circled here. That is an area in the final condition that would severely limit the development of this lot. An above ground basin could not go in this location. We have a retaining wall with an 8-foot max height here. We have a 3-to-1 slope here. That basin could not go in this direct location in the final condition. It would have to be pulled further back off the wall and further off the slope that we're creating this flat pad site with. And doing so would also limit the size of the building and the number of parking spaces that we're allowed to provide. Based on the fact that 40-50% of this lot is already undeveloped because of the restrictions with the river, the wetlands, and the CLMP and sanitary easements, the applicant is obviously trying to make this project economically feasible by maximizing the usable area of the site to the best of his ability. Putting an above ground basin takes away from some of the area that we can develop. With that said, the stormwater management system that we are providing, although it is underground, does meet the standards of a Connecticut stormwater management system that is required by the state in terms of water quality and peak flow mitigation. It's typically used when there's tight sites, especially something of this nature, where there's high groundwater adjacent to a wetlands, adjacent to a river, when you're trying to, balance economics as well. I'm not sure if that addresses your question or not.
It does. It answers my question. I think there, this is Commissioner Voda. I feel relatively comfortable with the application. I think maybe can you talk a little bit about, and maybe we can pull up the peak flow, and I would like to take a look at that. And do you have a hydrograph for the site in the plan that you can?
I can definitely find a chart really quickly. Hold on 1 second. A lot of pages there.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see. Again, Matt Bruton, engineer from BL Companies for the record. So this chart here shows the existing versus proposed peak rates of runoff with each design point. So just if you guys are not aware, I'm sure you guys have heard this 1,000 times. We analyze stormwater systems for a variety of storm events, anything from the 2-year storm up to the 100-year storm. So this gets everything from your little drizzle in the springtime to a big hurricane level event that's putting down 7+ inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So the system is sized for that whole swath of variety of things. So in the existing conditions,
I just want to ask you a question before you continue. For your existing calculation, what did you put in as the for the ground cover, as in what was your, did the calculation, what did you use as ground as the existing surface conditions?
Yep, let me see if I can find that real quick for you. Stuck here, hold on. So while I'm letting this thing catch up, we use a program called HydroCAD. It's a application that we use to input the ground cover and areas for each drainage area, and also we use it to calculate the time of concentration of each area to calculate peak flow. So that's the software program that we used. Sorry, I don't know why this is hung up right now. Here, let me let this catch up, Commissioner Boda, and I'll talk about this chart real quick as my computer responds. So we do the existing conditions and then the proposed conditions because we want to compare apples to apples. So in this condition, in existing conditions for each event, we've variety anywhere from 2.4 cubic feet per second to 8, and then you can see in the proposed condition we're going to 1 to 4. So that's a reduction of almost 50% in some cases off site. So there's two different distinct analysis points that we use. So in both cases, there was an overall reduction. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to mitigate peak flows to not wash out and inundate a wetland with too much water, and we obviously don't want to cause any erosion control issues either. Let me see if I can find the ground cover for you. My guess is we're obviously used woods. The wooded areas in the rear would be the ground cover that we used for the natural areas to the rear of the lot. I'm sure you just want to see what we used for the cleared areas. What do we got here? Pre-developed hydrology. Okay, so these are the two areas discussed. We had a small area going to Route 1, and then the majority of the area going to the stream. So description of nodes here. So this is the variety of the ground cover that we have. So, right, obviously, the largest area, you know, we have anything from brush to gravel surfaces to a meadow non-grazed area. We have some pavement in the front, and then also we have wooded areas as well. The HSG, the hydraulic soil group, that is a description of the soil based on Web Soil Survey. It's a website that's put on by the government to classify soil types in the area. So the HSG B, C, or D is in reference to the types of soils that are present on site. A being the best type of infiltration soil, D as being the worst type of soil. So you can see obviously that we have a variety of anything from B to D, depending on where we are on site. So this is the breakdown, Commissioner Boda, of the surface types. Let's see, computer is doing better now. I'm just looking for one more map I think would be helpful if I can get to find it. So here are the areas, right? So there's a small area that's depicted as ED 100. That goes to the kind of front area here. And then ED 200 is the remaining area that heads back towards the wetland and the river. So we have some breakdowns here of, you know, total area, impervious area, pervious area, times of concentration. I don't know if that answer your question, Commissioner Boda.
Yes.
Commissioner Bassam, is the commission satisfied with the conditions that have been laid out in the application? And are there additional conditions that any commissioner wants to suggest at this point?
Well, this is Commissioner Boda. I think that, so what we had talked about this evening was putting those 17 spots into, it was almost like a kind of in between a reserve, right? It was with like pavers or something to just make it more pervious. The snow piling into the maintenance plan, the using of for the erosion control blankets that they're made with material that breaks down as opposed to a plastic. What else?
snow storage call-outs on the plan.
Yeah.
And 5 years of long-term maintenance on
5 year,
David
that's it.
Lord's maintenance plan.
Commissioner Begemon, so you had asked about the hand application and of the pesticide, or not pesticide, I'm sorry, the herbicide. So is that something that you are concerned should not be done, or were you satisfied that that single point application outweighs the need to repeatedly physically go in to the wetland?
So I don't think I have the answer to that. Not being an expert in herbicides and in invasive plant, removal. I know obviously if you do it by hand, if without. So the question is, I don't really want to approve a plan that could then damage the wetlands that we're trying to protect.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that the roller application would be better than the spray nozzle because you're getting it more directly onto the plant stems or the trunk, depending on how big the plant is. So that's what I would advocate for. Again, I'm not an expert and I don't know. It's not required to get rid of these invasives. And I don't know if it's in the Wetlands Commission, do we look at the use of herbicides and make a decision about whether it should be used?
So typically in a situation like this, where there is an expert that is putting forward a plan, and there is a rationale, then we would typically defer to it unless there is a specific reason and an expertise within the commission and a rationale for why we would put forward something different. And so I think in terms of removing invasives from the wetland and doing that as part of their mitigation work, I think that is something that is helpful to the wetland because those invasives can create a monoculture, and so we end up losing our native biodiversity. I think in terms of the way that Mr. Lord had described the application, and that it does not then migrate into the wetland, and that there's a plan for that, I'm less concerned about doing that than letting the invasives take over. And to me, that having the 5-year maintenance would allow us to monitor if the planting plan is working as outlined, and if it's not, then we can follow up and adjust and work with Mr. Lord to correct something. But unless there was a specific reason, I wouldn't want to suggest a change.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Jamie Frederick, and the Wetland Agent. I just also want to identify that the report identifies that reports will include percent establishment of ground cover or herbaceous vegetation, types and numbers of any dead or failing trees and shrubs, as well as document their replacement. It doesn't specifically call out that it will provide an update on the invasive species management, so that might be something the Commission would want to consider adding.
We can add that.
Also, this plan is not required because they don't have direct wetland impacts as part of their development. So the requirement for a bond isn't included. So the Commission should consider whether they want a bond for the restoration enhancement plan and or erosion controls.
Um, Okay, so,
Mr. Basserman, Jamie, you said that in their document of August 5th that they didn't address the invasive species removal and its effectiveness?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. On the very last page, in the last paragraph, it goes over the written reports that will be submitted annually. And it doesn't specifically mention providing an update on the invasive management that was conducted.
Right, it's
or
only
the
the
status
ground
of-
cover and the trees and shrubs. Got it.
It outlines that it will do that work, but it doesn't outline that it will report on it.
Okay, yep.
okay, so that, I mean, that can be added easily as a condition. So I think that then do we want to do bonds for erosion and for planting? And that's always my favorite discussion.
Well, Commissioner Bassman, given the amount of shrubs and plantings that are going to be part of this plan and the different species, et cetera, it would seem to me that a bond to make sure that this happens and is successful is prudent.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. If you do require a bond for the mitigation plan or enhancement plan or restoration plan, usually the process is that the applicant submits an estimate for the plantings, the monitoring, all of the various aspects of implementing the plan. As David Lord identified, the exact number of plantings aren't necessarily known. So it's, I mean, it could be based on the number that he's called out as in his plan. But you may want to add a little bit regarding the fact that the applicant shall submit an estimate to be approved by staff to the condition if you do move forward with the bond.
Commissioner Basserman, this is Eric Rose. Given the fact that the work being done on the wetland side of this retaining wall is largely optional and being proposed as an improvement of the environment, and of course their construction sequence has the wall going in first, protecting all of this area, down gradient of the site. The bond is fine. It just, I would hate to see the requirement of an estimate to establish a bond value delaying us being able to vote on this tonight as it's actionable tonight. I wouldn't want to see that requirement delay us till a later date when we can review that estimate. We should enable them to submit that for staff review and approval, but not let it interfere with voting on this application when it would be the equivalent of shooting themselves in the foot.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. To clarify, that's what I meant.
Great.
It would be after the approval.
Thank you.
Also, Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. The applicant has requested a fee reduction, which we should go over at some point before making a decision on the application. I don't know if you want to stop and do that now, or if you want to kind of run through what you're doing now and touch base on that afterwards.
I'd like to, Commissioner Bass would like to have that discussion on the fee reduction now, because as Commissioner Rose indicated, this is intended to be the area A, B, and C, intended to be an improvement and providing some additional functional ability for wildlife to feed and migrate, etc. So I guess to the extent that there is a fee reduction requested, do we have a basis on which we would consider the fee reduction?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I'll kind of outline the request and then the applicant can fill in the support for the request. So there was a request submitted. The fee was originally calculated at $5,325, which is what the applicant has submitted at this time. After the upland review zone restoration / enhancement planting details was submitted, I identified that increased the area of disturbance and asked them to update the areas of disturbance as that would impact the fee. The fee went up to $6,540.55. As Commissioner Rose identified, all of that additional disturbance is the applicant's attempt at trying to provide an enhancement area. Ultimately, the applicant is requesting that the fee be reduced to $2,500. And then I just added that there's also a $60 deep fee. The commission can decide whether that's part of the $2,500 or if they'd want to add the $60 or if they want any number in between the $6,540 and $2,500.
This is Commissioner Kraus. So what's the rationale for reducing the fee? Is the $5,325 not in line with the fee that we've charged other applicants? I understand why the increased fee to $6,000 plus might not be applicable because that's the area of land that they're enhancing. But what's the rationale for reducing the fee from the original figure to the $2,500 figure? And is that in line with other applicants?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I just put up the fee reduction request letter that was submitted by the applicant. And so there's two reasons that the commission can grant a fee reduction. One is if the project is clearly to a public benefit or environmental benefit. And the other one is if the fee is clearly in excess of the cost for reviewing the application.
Commissioner Bassman, this is just for clarification. So if you go back to that other page, the 5,300, that was the area without consideration of the enhancement area?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, that is correct. And that's based on the total site disturbance. And ultimately they're requesting to reduce to the computable square footage of 60,000 square feet, which I think is what the previous bullet kind of identifies the rationale for that. I'm not sure that there is a lot of precedence for this. I'm personally not familiar with a lot that in this particular scenario, but the commission did revise their fee schedule in 2017, and I'm not really sure of a comparable application necessarily to this one.
This is Commissioner Bassman. I guess what I'm struggling with a little bit is I can certainly see where you might not want to increase it beyond the 5,300, given the nature of the enhancement and the logic for the enhancement areas. But I guess I'm struck with a little bit on the 5,300, which is on the basis of our regulations and disturbance, and the conditions that you talked about. I didn't see as part and parcel of what generated the 5,300.
This is Commissioner Kraus. My question is, and I'm sort of going along in the same lines as Commissioner Basserman, I can see not raising the fee, but I'm not sure about reducing the fee to less than 50%, because I thought in the past we calculated the fees based on the total area in the application and not just the percentage of the area that actually dealt with wetlands disturbance. If I'm wrong, someone please correct me.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, it's standard for the applications to be for the total site disturbance, including disturbance outside of the review area.
Has that, this is Vincent Giordano. Has that been the standard for calculating the fee, the total area of disturbance for, for quite some time, or is that a recent imposition? I was trying to rationalize the area of disturbance that was in the upland review area as opposed to the total area. And one of the reasons for that is because, obviously we've been through P&Z already with the stockpile. We have to go through them again after this process. And so there's obviously fees associated with that as it relates to the other area. So it just seemed like a double dip to me to go beyond the upland review area.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, it's been standard, I think, at least since the 2007 regulations. I'm not familiar with regulations before then, for at least for commercial development, for it to be based on the total area of disturbance, including outside the 100-foot review area. And the rationale for that is because the commission's looking at the whole project and how drain, because particularly since the development of the site generally drains towards the wetland area, so they need to look at the whole project. And they can't just draw a line at the upland review area and look at only the activity in the review area.
Commissioner Bassman, this is Eric Rose. Certainly, regardless of the reasons or purpose of the mitigation they're proposing north of the retaining wall, it would set probably a bad precedent to carve up the site to reduce our basic fee when we've always based our fee on the total site area. As Jamie points out, it's the area outside of wetlands that impacts wetlands, and that is why we review it that way. But given the commitment of the developer to make these improvements purely for why are we doing this? They're doing it for very good reasons. It would be certainly a good rationale not to punish them by increasing the fee beyond what we would normally consider as the fee. I think holding it at the standard calculation of $53.85 makes perfect sense without penalizing them for going the extra mile and volunteering to make important improvements environmentally.
Commissioner Bassman, I concur. Commissioner Rose.
Okay, so
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, is this a separate vote for the bond, or can we incorporate that within the decision one way or the other on the application?
So Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, the fee reduction consideration would be separate from the bond. I think it would probably be a good idea for the commission to make a vote. I don't know that you need to. It says that the agency should consider, and then it ends with the agency shall state upon its record the basis for all actions under the subsection. But you guys you've discussed your reasons, but maybe just to make sure that there's a general consensus and to confirm the amount, which it sounds like the commission is leaning towards keeping the amount, the $5,325 amount that has been submitted.
So
I'm sorry, 5,385.
this is Commissioner Boda. So what I'm hearing now is that we need to do three things. One is the fee reduction. So that would be a motion 1, 2, 3. And then the second piece would be to clarify the bonds, which we talked about one for the planting plan, and that would be that the applicant would need to submit an estimate for the planting bond to town staff. And I'm wondering if we would say the same for sediment and erosion control. If that is potentially separate and prior to, then final approval with conditions. So that's either 2 or 3 separate things. What is your thought on the sequence of these actions?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I think the commission should start with the fee reduction, and then the consideration of the bond language would be essentially what you're going to include in your condition language. And typically with mitigation or enhancement planting plans, it includes the plantings, seeding, and the monitoring reports.
So if somebody is ready to then make a motion for the fee reduction, we can get that out of the way and move on to the other 2. I don't want to do that first one. Somebody else can do that. I can do the next. I can do the other one.
This is Commissioner Kraus. I make a motion that we hold the fee at $5,385 that's already been submitted and not increase the fee. The rationale for that is that the increased area of disturbance is beneficial to the town good.
I second that motion. Commissioner Rose.
This is Commissioner Basserman. I would just add to that, it is in accordance with our town regulations.
I second that correction.
Any further discussion? I guess we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Basserman, I agree. Commissioner Boda?
Aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Aye.
Commissioner Granalch? Commissioner Rose?
Aye.
Commissioner Begeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
One more time, Commissioner Granalch?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Now, in terms of the process, this Commissioner Bass, just want to be clear. The discussion regarding the bond is to be considered a condition such that we could still act on this application this evening. Is that correct?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, that would be correct if you wanted to. I was just providing some guidance for if you wanted to make it an action tonight and you wanted to have a bond, some language that should be considered as part of that condition.
Commissioner Bassman again. Now, Commissioner Bodo raised a bifurcated bond, which was one for plantings, etc., and the other one for sediment and erosion control. Have we? Yes, we have done bonds for sediment and erosion control previously, correct?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, yes.
Okay.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Sometimes in the past, the commission has worked in language that with the erosion controls that says that the erosion control bond may be worked in can't think of the word I want right now. Conjunction with planning and zoning, because sometimes planning and zoning requires an erosion control bond as well. We don't really need 2 erosion control bonds for the same project. So essentially one entity would take the erosion control bond. It's just something to consider.
Commissioner Bassman, but we don't know that that's going to be the case here, correct?
Right. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, and the Planning and Zoning Commission does receive a copy of our permit, so they can see on there that you required the erosion control bond.
So it's
This
Commissioner about it.
is Matt from BL. Oh, God.
Is there a mechanism for that? Like how? So, what would be the mechanism for who then would take, I don't want to say ownership, but responsibility, I suppose, for that particular bond? That's
Jamie Frederick and Wetland Agent. I understand your confusion, and honestly, I'm not really sure. I've seen that language in permits before. I don't know that I've.
So let me ask a different question then. This is Commissioner Boda. Is it a standard practice for planning and zoning to require a bond for sediment and erosion controls?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, they assess it on a project by project basis. And I do believe that they would possibly give consideration to whether or not wetlands required a bond, but I'm not sure.
This is Commissioner Rose. Not sure why we need to anticipate or predict what zoning is going to do. It seems to me whatever they're going to do is going to be predicated on whatever we do, and we're first. So if we have a legitimate concern about planting and erosion controls being followed through on, then we should do what we're going to do, and they will attach to that whatever they think is appropriate. I would be concerned about how long those bonds would be held. Certainly, I understand the planting plan maybe wants to be for a longer period of time, but the erosion controls should
Is he cutting out for everybody or just me?
No, it's clipping.
Not you.
last longer than the
Commissioner Rose, you're in and out a lot.
completion of the permanent construction we request for the bonds.
We lost you for a while. But this is Commissioner Boda. I understand what he's saying. So I think so. So can we do something similar in that we look for the applicant to submit a bond for sediment and erosion control to town staff? And is there additional language that you want to put on that? So Jamie, you had earlier mentioned that the bond should cover planting, monitoring, and seeding. So is there a similar list that would clarify what it is they should include in their submission?
I think to just say erosion controls is sufficient, and you can say itemized, so that way they're identifying silt fence and then an estimate based on linear footage and stuff like that. And it's a pretty standard request, so.
Matt Bruton from BL. We're very familiar with putting together an erosion control bond, so we're happy to provide that if that's a condition you're attaching to this approval.
Okay.
As Commissioner Basserman, I guess we talked about estimating the plantings as well. A reasonable time frame for that to be submitted to staff would be, and I look to BL or David to provide that date.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, the standard past practice has been to have the condition identified prior to start of work.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are we ready? I have a list.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Just one other thought I had regarding similar projects. Commission may want to consider whether or not they want an as-built of the completed project.
Always. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Boda, are we good now? I'm going to try. We'll see.
Please, go ahead, Commissioner Boda.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve inland wetland 20.07.01 434 East Main Street with the following conditions of approval. That the 17 parking spaces over the required 100 be put into reserve or something similar with pervious pavers or something similar. That snow storage be added into the plan, but parentheses landscaping. That the planting plan be updated to the reporting is extended to 5 years. That the status of invasive plants is to be included in the planting plan reports. That the erosion control blankets shall be made of a natural fiber. That an as-built be submitted at completion of the project. And prior to the start of work, an itemized control bond be submitted to town staff. Additionally, that a planting plan bond, including plantings, monitoring, and seeding, also be submitted to town staff.
Commissioner Bassman, that sounds pretty complete to me. Any other commissioners want to add to that list?
You have to second it first.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Kraus, I'll second it.
Are there any other conditions that we'd like to add to that list?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Suzanne, can you just read off the second to last condition again real quick?
The as-built be submitted at completion of the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that motion on the table.
Sorry, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Just one other question. I don't have the full thing regarding the bonds, but I think I can grab it off of the recording. But did it include the estimate and submission of the bond, or just the submission of an estimate?
Say that again. Estimate and submission of the bond?
Yeah, or could you just read off the bond one real quick too?
Prior to the start of work, an itemized erosion and control bond shall be submitted to the commission. And same with the planting plan bond, which shall include the plantings, monitoring, and seeding.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Commissioner Boda, is that to the commission or to the commission staff that the submission should take place?
It was for town staff. Is that what did we not agree that it goes to town staff?
Commissioner Bassman, I thought that's what we agreed. I'm not sure I heard that as you articulated what the motion was.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Bassman, does that complete your list, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, it's your list, but
Well,
I think covers everything that was discussed.
Okay. We're now going to be voting on application 200701. Commissioner Kraus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Beckerman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Grosh, Commissioner Grenache,
Aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Commissioner Boda,
Aye.
I think I got everyone. I think that's a unanimous vote. Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was a well done presentation, folks.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your consideration. I appreciate working with you guys and town staff. I appreciate the approval, and we look forward to working with you guys in the future.
And this is Vincent Giordano. I also, appreciate the consideration for this approval. Thank you very much.
Good luck, Vincent.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. All right.
Good night.
Question for the commission. It's now a little after 9. You want to take 5 or you want to keep on going? Hearing none, we'll keep on going. We have modifications to permits. Inland Wetland 200201 permit modification request for 441 Brainerd Road. Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, you want to talk us through this?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So this was a recently approved 4-lot residential subdivision. There was a minor modification a couple months ago that the commission considered and granted regarding adjustments to lot lines. There's been a couple additional minor modifications to the lot lines as part of the planning and zoning review of the subdivision. Lot lines have moved plus or minus 1 or 2 feet, so there's really not any impact to the overall subdivision from a wetland standpoint, except that I did note that the limits of disturbance had been adjusted. So I brought that to the attention of the engineering company and they moved it back. However, the clearing or the proposed tree line is still doesn't match that revised silt fence location. So I would suggest that if the commission does approve the modified lot lines, that they just make it clear that they're not approving any increase in limited disturbance or clearing as part of the acceptance of the lot line revisions.
So, Commissioner Basserman, so is that a vote that's required on this or as a modification or what?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I believe a vote would be appropriate.
This is Commissioner Boda. You've got a hand up over.
Yes, thank you. Jim Galligan from Naples and Young.
Hold on one second. You got to wait for the chairman to recognize you. I wanted to make sure he saw you.
Consider yourself recognized.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Jim Galligan from Naples and Young. There's been, we're proposing no change whatsoever to the activity on this application. It's simply a minor modification to lines between lots 1 and 2. We're not proposing to change any of the construction activity, any of the sequence of construction, any of the filling or excavation. There's no change to the physical activity on the application.
Commissioner Basserman, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion from the commission on this modification? Do a roll call vote on the consideration of, I guess you would call it an administrative change of the lot lines. Commissioner Kraus?
Aye.
Commissioner Boda?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Begeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Rose. Commissioner Rose,
Aye.
Commissioner Grinall.
Did you hear my vote? Aye.
I did. Okay. Commissioner Basserman, aye.
Aye.
I think that you got everyone, Jamie.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Did you ask Commissioner Begemon?
I did.
Then
I heard an aye. Okay, and then we're into now the applications for receipt this evening.
Thank you all very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Before we get into the applications for receipt, there is another modification regarding the subdivision that the applications for receipt is for.
Oh,
Or from.
okay. Inland Wetland 19-1005, 99 Todd Hill Road, modifications for planning and zoning approval.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So 5 applications were received regarding this subdivision. I realized there were some minor modifications to the lot lines as part of the planning and zoning approval. The largest differences were pertaining to lots 8 and 13, which both increased in size. However, looking at the planning and zoning subdivision grading plan and the grading plans that were submitted, or the site plans that were submitted as part of the applications for receipt, the limits of disturbance do not extend into those increased lot areas. So can everyone see the subdivision plan?
Yes.
So this is lot 8 right here. The lot line that in the wetlands approved went straight across right here. So this triangular section on the top was added. There's no proposed activity for the development of lot 8 in that area. However, the driveway access to lot, I can't read that. I think it's 6, was to come off of Parish Farm Road, and it's been adjusted so that it comes through lot 8. So there will be a minor activity there later for the access to that lot, but that will prevent the driveway from going immediately adjacent to the wetland in this area. So it actually, I think, in my opinion, pulls the activity further away. And then the other lot that increased in size is lot 13. Again, the property line used to go right here when in the wetlands approved it, and it's been extended in this area here. And other minor modifications was that there was some added area to the right-of-way to help with right-of-way width issues. So there's a minor reduction to the overall open space, but it's still in excess of what's required for planning and zoning.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, do I then assess this as no impact on wetlands with these modifications?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, there's certainly no direct impacts, and I don't think that there's any significant changes in regards to the proposal. The engineering company and I believe the applicant, and the applicant's attorney is present. I'm not entirely sure on that, but there's certainly representatives from the property owner present. If you have any questions for them.
I think there's somebody talking.
Is somebody speaking?
Timothy Lee is speaking, but it's very, very low.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Once again, this is Tim Lee. I'm the attorney for Vigliotti Construction. They're the applicant. And also on the phone is Jeremy Gannon from Criscolo Engineering. If you have any questions, we're happy to try to answer them. But I think Jamie basically covered what the changes are. The changes resulted from the application to planning and zoning because there were some slight modifications through the planning and zoning process. We ended up getting kicked back to wetlands for those modifications. But as Jamie mentioned, they are relatively minor in nature and won't have any direct impact and probably no indirect impact either.
Is Commissioner Basserman, are all of the modifications results of changes that P and Z dictated?
Correct. Timothy Lee, that is correct.
Any further questions from the commission? Let's see, I guess we do a roll call vote on this as well. Commissioner Basserman, yes. Commissioner Kraus? Commissioner Kraus? Commissioner Rose?
Aye. Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Aye.
Commissioner Rose? Commissioner Begeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Boda?
Aye.
Commissioner Granolf?
Aye.
Commissioner Rose? Okay. I think we have enough votes to move this thing forward. Application for receipt, Inland Wetland 200801, 99. Was that you, Commissioner Rose? No. Application for receipt, Inland Wetland 200801, 99 Todds Hill Road, Lot 9, construction of a single-family house. I guess, Mr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Once again, for the record, Tim Lee, the attorney for the applicant. With me is Jeremy Gannon from Criscolo Engineering. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We had submitted 5 individual applications for 5 individual lots. Lot 8, Lot 9, Lot 12, Lot 13, and Lot 15, because they were impacted by the planning and zoning approval. With regard to Lot 9, there's very little difference between the application that the Wetlands Commission approved as part of the application and the application before you now. I turn it over to Jeremy. If you can just tell Jeremy, if you can just tell the commission what the difference is between the current Lot 9 and what Lot 9 they approved back in December of 2019.
Yeah. And Jeremy?
This is Commissioner Basserman. Can't hear you, Jeremy.
Hear me now?
Very, very muffled.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I think sometimes when there's video sound issues like this, I just turn off your video. Maybe other people turn off their video.
Sure, I stopped my video. Is it better now?
Jamie,
I hear you better.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So pertaining to Lot 9, as for improvements to Lot 9, prior to the previous subdivision, we've reinforced the silt fence that now currently runs along the driveway. Before it only extended to before the easement. In addition, we've added the topsoil fence surrounding it, as well as the stormwater draining system. And that is pretty much just a grass swale off a roof drain, and those calculations are based off of the roof area. For this particular house, the roof area was 1,783 square feet, which requires 149.5 cubic feet. The grass swale we propose is 25 linear feet with a volumetric flow of 6 feet, and that equates to 150 cubic feet. Similar to that, as for what was different with it prior to was, like Jamie had mentioned, the easement running along down south towards the road. And as for grading and that aspect of it, not much has changed. It's pretty much an identical version of what was previously proposed on the approved subdivision prior to.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. So the only change in the upland review area was the addition of silt fence along the driveway here to protect this wetland area. I think the applicant would like to request that it be handled administratively unless the commission wants to further review.
Yes, this is Tim Lee for the applicant. It is our request that the commission take action on this application tonight as the changes are relatively minor.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent, just to clarify, the application is for receipt, so the commission cannot make a determination tonight. However, if they determine that it's minor in nature, they could hand it off for agent approval.
Thank you.
Commissioner Basserman, I don't see any reason why this can't be done administratively. Does any commissioner feel otherwise?
This is Commissioner Boda. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't do
I
it.
agree. Commissioner
Grant Alch, I agree. Administratively is fine.
Commissioner Begamon, agree, administrative approval.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, is that sufficient, or do we need a roll call vote on this?
General consensus is sufficient. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent.
Great. Okay, next up, inland wetland. I'm sorry. Next up, application for receipt inland wetland 200802, 99 Todd's Hill Road, lot 12, construction of a single-family house.
Once again, Tim Lee on behalf of the applicant. Jeremy Gannon from Criscola Engineering is also here. This lot actually has less activity than the lot we just talked about. All the changes are located outside the 100-foot upland review area. I'll turn it over to Jamie. Jamie, if you could just highlight what the changes are in this version of lot 12 as opposed to the prior version of lot 12.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. The entire disturbance on the site is outside the 100-foot review area. This is the 100-foot review line right here, and you can see that the silt fence pretty much parallels it. The largest difference is that they added the temporary stockpile location and they added the drainage. Drainage will be roof drainage. This one seems pretty appropriate for agent approval, in my opinion.
Commissioner Basserman, I think this cries out for administrative approval. Anyone feel different?
Commissioner Grant Alch, I think administratively is fine.
Is that the general consensus of the commission?
Yes, this is Commissioner Boda.
Commissioner Sullivan, I agree.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kraus, I agree.
Thank you.
Commissioner Begamon, agree.
Next up, inland wetland 200803, 99 Todd's Hill Road, lot 13, construction single family house. Mr. Lee.
Once again, Tim Lee, on behalf of the applicant, I'm going to ask Jeremy Gannon just to discuss the differences between the current version of Lot 13 and the previously approved version of Lot 13. Jeremy, can you address that?
Absolutely. Jeremy Gannon, Crisco Engineering. So the footprint of the building has changed slightly from what we had proposed prior to. Once again, we've taken action with stormwater drainage systems. This one, the roof area is slightly bigger, so we have 30 linear feet of grass swale.
Excuse me, Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, can you put that up?
Oh, Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. I thought I had. I'm looking at it, but I'm not sharing it. Can you see it?
I can now. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So with this, right. So with this one, like I was saying, with the stormwater grass swale, it increased in size slightly from the other one, just based on roof area. This requires it to be 30 linear feet as opposed to 25 from the other lots. We've included a temporary topsoil stockpile with the silt fence, and grading has been very similar, and it almost mimics what was there prior to.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. Just to add to that, the grading is very similar. Grading was very similar. Originally proposed, the limited disturbance used to be slightly further away from the wetlands, with it hugging kind of this limit of where the proposed grading is. But it was extended so that the grass swale could be installed. And as you can see, this is where this area up here is the added area to the lot, and there's no proposed activity in that area. So I think the question again is whether the commission's comfortable with agent approval, or if you want to look at it more because the disturbance is slightly closer to the wetlands.
Commissioner Bassman, how much closer, Jamie, is it?
I estimated, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, that at the point where it moves the most, it's about 15 to 20 feet. I'm not sure if Crisco Engineering can provide a more accurate number or not.
I don't have a more accurate number as to, however, that seems about right, just based on the new footprint of
in this
correct.
area here, because Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, because essentially the limit used to hug where the edge of the grading is, because the termination of the proposed grades basically in the same location. So it would basically be from like this contour down through the swale going towards the wetland. And again, so like here, the silt fence was closer to this location right here where the point of the mouse is.
Correct, and that was for the grass swale.
Do we still have people?
This is Tim Lee on behalf of the applicant again. Once again, it's our request to have this property dealt with administratively if the commission thinks that that is appropriate.
Is Commissioner Bassman. Any commissioner have reservations about this being done administratively? Hearing none, it looks like inland wetland 200803 can be done. Yes? No. Can be done administratively, agent approval. Inland wetland 200804, 99 Todsdale Road, lot 15, construction, single family house.
Once again, Tim Lee on behalf of the applicant, Figliotti Construction. We have the routine down now, so I'm just going to turn it right over to Jeremy to discuss the differences between the current version of Lot 15 and the version that the commission had approved as part of the application last December. Jeremy?
Yes, very similar to Lot 13. Lot 15 had the same instance where the footprint of the building had changed.
Amy, would you, this is Commissioner Boda, could you pull the map up, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so with Lot 15, the footprint of the building had changed slightly from what the prior subdivision approval had entailed. This one, we've tried to keep it as tight to the setback line as possible without crossing it. In addition, we've provided the grass swale. Once again, this was just slightly bigger in roof area, so it required 26 linear feet as opposed to 25 at the ones before. Sediment controls, we've reinforced those and extended them, adding additional hay bale backing along the area due to the contours, the grading. It's a little bit steeper, and minor grading has been changed from the previous plan.
This is Commissioner Boda. What's a little steeper? We said it, but I'm not sure where you're talking about. I'm just looking at the map.
I'm just talking about the hay bale backing on this one as opposed to the other lots with the silt fence.
So, Commissioner Vasserman, I guess to follow up with Commissioner Boda's question, where along this line are you putting the additional hay bales?
So do you see the two dash lines? The one behind that one closest to the house would just be the silt fence. The one farther along would be the hay bale backing, just to add reinforcement to the silt fence.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The limited disturbance on the subdivision plan was approximately in this location where, so it was much closer to the house. However, again, it was adjusted so that they could handle the roof drainage on site with the proposed grass swale. So again, the question is whether or not the commission's comfortable with me handling this administratively.
This Commissioner Vasserman, Jamie, you would classify this as kind of an improvement?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. It's definitely good that they're handling the water on site. It is closer activity to the wetlands, so lots 13 and 15 were the two that I particularly thought the commission should at least be aware of the increased level of disturbance. I don't know that it's up to the commission to decide whether they want to look at it further or if they're comfortable with me reviewing it administratively. And
I would vote for an administrative approval on this. Rest of the commission?
Commissioner Rose, I agree.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Commissioner Granolch, I agree.
Commissioner Kraus, I agree.
Commissioner Begeman?
Agree.
Commissioner Boda?
It's okay. They just need to really watch what they're doing. They don't want to end up with an enforcement in front of us.
Commissioner Vasserman, I'm sure they would agree. Last up is Todd's Hill Road, Inland Wetland 200805, 99 Todd's Hill Road, Lot 8.
Once again, Tim Lee on behalf of Figliotti Construction. With me is Jeremy Gannon from Criscolo. We may have saved one of the easiest ones for last. There's really no change between this version and the prior version. Jeremy, if you can just explain what prompted you to submit the application for Lot 8.
Yes, absolutely. This one's very similar to Lot 9 that was approved. Once again, we've reinforced the silt fence and we had it running along now down the driveway. As prior to the previous subdivision that was approved, it only carried along the property line. Similarly, we've added the topsoil surrounded with the silt fence and the stormwater drainage into the grass swale, just like the other ones. And this is the same footprint as two of the other houses, which requires the same 25 linear feet of grass swale. No difference in grading as to what was priorly approved, and that's about it with this lot.
This Commissioner Bassman, I think I understand the grass swale improvement. I guess what was the prompt? What was it that prompted you to add the erosion controls?
We added them along the driveway just to protect lot 7 as well as the wetlands downstream.
Okay. Commissioner Bassman, I would agree this is ripe for administrative approval.
Commissioner Granolch, I agree.
Are there any dissenting votes? Great.
No.
Thank you very much for your input, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too. Now moving to some enforcement activity. This is Commissioner Bassman, notice of violation 103 Sunset Hill Drive, clearing and filling of a wetland. Jamie, the floor is yours.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I've been in correspondence with the property owner, the property owner's attorney. I don't believe anyone is present for this topic. They've retained a soil scientist to do the report. They have reflagged the wetlands, but they've not received the report yet, and we're not able to attend this evening. I'm hoping the plan will be received for September. Does the commission want me to send a letter kind of requiring that the plan be submitted for September so that way it can be reviewed and hopefully enacted upon this upcoming planting season?
Commissioner Bassman, I guess this has been on various agendas for a while. Do we think that there's a issue between getting the report to them, or is it getting the report from them to us?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. They had identified hardship relative to COVID, and given that planting during the summer was not really ideal, the commission would give them some time with the idea that they could plant in the fall. That time has been stretching out, and my concern would be making sure it doesn't stretch out till the next planting season. But it does sound like they've retained a soil scientist and they're working on it. So hopefully the commission will have a plan for next month.
Yeah, Commissioner Bassman, I think a little correspondence that just gives them a gentle nudge, talking about the timing of approval necessary in order to, stabilize what we're trying to do here would be incumbent upon us to probably move that along. Notice of violation, Thimble Island, filling and clearing in the upland review area.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Again, no one's present tonight for that topic, but I did say that I was going to provide you with an update. At this time, no material has been removed. With the storm event that happened, a fair amount of trees came down from the town property in that area. So I went out and saw that, and the town will remove any of the vegetation that's hanging over onto the Thimble Isle condo property. And I know that the management company was going to have a discussion regarding the violation with the board. The notice of violation follow-up letter that was sent to them did not have a deadline for when they had to have the material removed by. I guess my question would be, do you want to provide a deadline, or do you want to continue to remain in course for me to remain in correspondence with the property owner management company, and see where things go?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think if we don't give them a deadline, it's not going to happen.
Right. Commissioner Bassman, I would agree. The other thing is, I think the last time there was an update on this one, there was some disagreement on the fillings as not, the millings as not being appropriate. Are we still getting pushback on that, or have they acknowledged that the millings need to be removed?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. I get the impression that they're debating whether or not to remove the material or try and submit an application after the fact for approval. I've discussed with them my concerns regarding that, but anyone's welcome to submit an application. So I think that's part of the conversation that they're looking to have with the board, as either action will require funds and needs to be approved by the board.
This is Commissioner Bassman, but I essentially agree with Commissioner Boda's comment that we need to give them a date. What would you suggest is a reasonable date?
Particularly given that they've had a month already.
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. Are you asking me, or are you asking the commission?
I guess you've been in, Commissioner Bassman, you've been in conversation with them. You've read the body language. What do you feel is an appropriate date here?
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. I mean, I suppose the next Inland Wetland Commission meeting, either that or at the very least an update to the commission regarding progress and status.
This is Commissioner Boda.
It's a lot of time.
So the correspondence that went out to them, it was a notice of violation that said they needed to remove the film. Other than that, that's a question. So what was the correspondence that went to them?
So Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. The correspondence that went to them identified that at the meeting, the commission determined that the asphalt millings placed in the northwest corner of the parking area need to be removed. The area needs to be restored to the pre-existing grade. Area needs to be stabilized through seeding. Erosion controls are not to be removed until the area has been stabilized. And then I asked at the end of my letter to please keep me updated on progress and any questions, and that I plan to provide the commission with an update at their next meeting, but I didn't require that the activity be completed.
Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, you went out to the site. How much of an issue is the vegetation as a result of the storm?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. A fair amount of trees came down. I don't know that it's really what came down onto their property is not a lot. And aside from the visual appearance of it, I don't think it has a lot of impact beyond the fact that some of it might make the removal a little bit challenging. So I think they were kind of waiting for the town to be able to address that.
Well, and this is Commissioner Boda. I think that given that they don't have a response, they're not looking for anything. And with respect to the storm, I'm not feeling like I want to hand them an excuse that they don't need, that they haven't asked for, they haven't, done anything. So I'm not looking to make accommodations for something for which they haven't asked. So there was a notice of violation that went to them. Regardless of if there was a this must be completed by date, if they're not telling us anything right now, then I think it would make sense to send a follow-up letter that says that this is their second notice of violation with respect to the fill, and that it needs to be removed, and an update provided for our regularly scheduled September meeting.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Rose. Just a added clarification. Have they even lifted a finger yet with respect to anything in your original NOV?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Not that I'm aware of.
So they're thumbing their nose at this process.
Yes. And not to be flip, but I guarantee that if they have violations on their property of their bylaws, they do not wait 2 seconds to issue notice of violation and fines. So I think, to be clear, that they need to remove the fill. It is their second notice. And I think that it makes sense to put in that notice that the commission can issue fines for wetland violations for up to, I don't remember what the number it is, like $999 a day or something stupid. I don't know. I think that they need to take an action.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Understood. We do have some standard language regarding the issuance of fines, and also cease and correct orders. Is that something I should also include too?
Yes. Yeah. I think that would, whatever the, and we haven't had to do that in a while, but down close to the Farm River, there was the property that we had an ongoing issue with. So I know that we had language from there, but whatever the requisite language is, I think it would be appropriate to include it here.
Will do. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent.
Thank you.
Okay. Other business, what was emailed out in Jamie's correspondence were the draft modifications and updates to the guidance document we've been talking about regarding permit conditions. I assume at this point, Jamie, which by the way, I thought it was a quite extensive work, you're looking for feedback from the commission?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. That is correct. I don't know if we want to dive into it right now, but I can
answer that question.
I didn't get it out sooner, but basically what I did was I took the 2018 draft working conditions boilerplate document and reframed it. I made the first page of the new document things that are specific to Branford. So the Section 1111, those are general provisions of all permits per the commission's regulations. Standard inspections are a basic list we run through for all applications. Standard conditions apply to all permits. Pages 2, 3, and 4 are all kind of based on Branford past practice. And then 5 through 8 are all things that were in the 2018 document that came from Milford, with some of my comments regarding whether it's addressed in some way with a Branford condition or just various notes. So I don't know if we wanted to schedule discussion at the September meeting regarding it. If commissioners have any questions or concerns regarding any specific condition listed, you can feel free to contact me and let me know.
Commissioner Basserman, yeah, I think at this point it would be worth a good review and comment. This may be a couple iterations before we, conclude whatever it is that we want to incorporated into this guidance document. So I guess get your comments to Jamie via email, and the next question you raised was whether this be part of that September meeting. And we're just
Commissioner Grunwald, why don't we put it on the agenda and then we can discuss it if we want to.
Works for me.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. And it's essentially the purpose of this document is so that, like with the bond condition that we were discussing, there would be standard language that you could go to, and you could just reference conditions 7, 10, and 13. So just a little context.
Okay. Agent approvals.
So 7 Oakgate Drive was an in-ground pool. The proposed activity was actually downgrade from the wetlands, so I handled that administratively. 20 Lemaitre Lane, Commission saw that application and okayed it for agent approval. The erosion controls have been installed on that site and they have started work. Moving on to pending applications for agent approval, if I may. Those 3 applications have all been reviewed by the commission and approved for agent approval. I'm currently waiting on revised materials, and I've actually received revised materials today for 2 of those, but I did not have a chance to look at them yet. And then under correspondence and announcements, Commissioner Rick Ross has resigned from the commission, unfortunately. So the commission is now down to the 7 regular members with no alternatives, or alternates. So if anyone knows someone that's interested, they can, I believe, reach out to the Board of Selectmen. A quick reminder that a special meeting was scheduled for September 3rd to discuss approach to regulation revisions and fees. I just wanted to confirm that that date still works for everybody and ask what materials the commission wants me to have available for that discussion.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, we had certainly talked about fees and comparisons with other towns and things like that. And I think that I think there's a document that already exists that kind of outlines that. Is that something that you have in your possession and can share?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I'm not sure, but I can certainly take a look, and if so, have it available.
Yeah, and I think if that could be sent out prior to the September 3rd meeting, that would be helpful.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Boda. Would it make sense to include the boilerplate conditions discussion in that same meeting? I mean, this is all administrative in-house stuff.
Commissioner Bassman, I think that was Commissioner Grinalch's suggestion that we add it to the agenda for the 3rd. Am I correct there, Richard?
That's correct. I thought we could add it, and if we don't want to take it up, we can. If we don't have time, that's fine. But at least once it's on the agenda, then we can act on it.
Okay. This is Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, you had mentioned also about the executive order and whether we wanted just to touch on that for a minute.
Sure. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So these remote meetings are allowed per executive order. And it is my understanding that that executive order expires after September 9th. So I believe that currently there are actions being taken to try and extend that period of remote meetings. But currently with the regular meeting being on September 10th, there's a possibility that we won't be able to do remote meetings at that time. I am talking with the first selectman regarding any changes that are being made to continue remote meetings and or what precautions we should take for when we do start in-person meetings, because even if we can continue with remote in September, eventually we will be returning to in-person. So I will keep the commission updated and let you know whether the September 3rd meeting can and will be remote. But I'll keep the commission updated on whether the September 10th meeting will be as well or not.
This is Commissioner Basserman, and my comment would be, if any commissioner is concerned about in-person meeting and the necessary safety precautions that should be incorporated into those meetings, let Jamie know so that she can feed that into whatever the town decides it's going to do for in-person meetings when and if that happens. Is there anything else, Jamie, for tonight?
That's all I have.
Any commission?
Make sure that the motion to adjourn is seconded and voted on, though.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission?
I make a motion that we adjourn. This is Commissioner Boda.
Commissioner Sullivan seconds it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I don't think we need a roll call vote on that, Jamie. No. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.